3 years ago, my father told me seats at his table were earned, not given to those who fall short. Those words cut deep, especially since I arrived late to his 60th birthday dinner only because my brother gave me the wrong time. I stood there, humiliated, with my wife and 2 kids by my side, and chose to walk away. Fast forward to 6 months ago, my father showed up at my doorstep, hands trembling, holding a foreclosure notice from the bank. I looked him in the eye and said, "You once told me I had no place at your table. Now, I have no room for you in my life." I'm not sharing this to throw shade or point fingers. I'm here to ask, is there a limit to forgiveness, especially when your family never truly made space for you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hey there, I'm Ethan Harper, 36 years old, working remotely for a data analytics company based in Austin, Texas. My life's pretty much like any other middle-aged guy's. I work during the day, cook dinner with my wife, Sarah, in the evening, help our kids with their homework, and then we all settle in for an old movie before bed. Sarah's an elementary school teacher at a nearby public school, and we've been married for 11 years. Life didn't feel whole until our son, Noah, 10, and our daughter, Emma, 8, came along. Noah's always sketching, creating these incredible drawings, and Emma's obsessed with building Lego sets, each one more elaborate than the last. They both bring out the kid in me, but with a happiness I never knew growing up. I'm so proud of the little family we've built, but if anyone asks about my parents, the Harpers, I usually flash a smile and change the subject, not out of hatred, but because 3 years ago, at my father's 60th birthday dinner, they forced me to choose. Stay silent and swallow the shame, or stand up for my confused kids as they watch their grandfather tear their dad down. I chose to stand up, and from that moment, I knew I no longer had a seat at the table that once felt like family. 3 years ago, exactly 1 week before my father's 60th birthday, my older brother Logan called me. Logan's 5 years my senior and has always been the golden child in our parents' eyes, the one they'd stand beside in every family photo, the one they'd brag about to friends, even if no one really knew what he'd accomplished. When I picked up, Logan got straight to the point. No small talk, no "how's it going?" He said, "Dad's turning 60 next week. He wants a big celebration, inviting the whole extended family and old friends. Can you make it?" I paused for about 5 seconds, my mind racing, before saying, I'm not sure. Work's been crazy lately." He went quiet for a moment, then added, "I think you should come. It's Dad's 60th, a big milestone." I didn't commit, just told him, "Send me the time, and I'll see what I can do." The call lasted maybe another minute before I hung up and got back to work. About 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a short text. 7 o'clock at Mom and Dad's. I replied with a heart emoji and a quick, "Thanks, Logan." And that was it. That evening, after dinner was cleaned up and the kids were playing in the living room, I told Sarah about Logan's call and the big 60th birthday party for my dad. She paused what she was doing, turned to me, and with that quiet, steady gaze of hers, asked, "Are you going?" Sarah's always been like that, straight to the point, no fluff. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never felt like I was really welcome at those things." She didn't say anything right away. She set the dish towel aside, walked over, and placed a warm, steady hand on my shoulder, grounding me like she does when I'm spiraling. "I get it, Ethan, but if you don't go, they'll use it against you again. Say you're cold or distant. We don't need to give them more ammo." Before I could process her words, Noah and Emma overheard us from the living room and came running in, their voices bubbling with excitement, eyes lit up like we'd just promised a trip to Disneyland. "Dad, can we go to Grandpa's birthday? We'll make gifts for him. I want to give mine myself." My chest tightened, not from the trip itself, but from the fear that my kids might feel the same coldness I grew up with. Not a chill in the air, but the kind you see in someone's eyes when they look at you like you don't belong. After a few heavy seconds of silence, I nodded. All right, we'll go. I didn't go for me. I went for Noah and Emma, who still saw their grandparents as something good. And, if I'm being honest, I was holding on to a sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, this visit would spark something in my parents. A bit of warmth, a touch of care for their grandkids, just enough to make Noah and Emma feel like they had grandparents who loved them. 1 week later, at precisely 10 minutes to 7, we pulled up to my parents' house on the northern outskirts of Charlottesville, nearly 60 miles from our place. The driveway and front yard were already packed with cars, and the gate was unlocked, so we walked right in. But the moment we stepped into the living room, where the party was in full swing, I froze. Music was playing, laughter filled the air, and the celebration was clearly well underway. Most of the food was gone, some guests were finishing dessert, and others were raising glasses of wine. From the looks of it, the party had started around 6. I stood there for a few seconds, my heart pounding, not from anger, but from that sinking feeling of being left out, of not fitting in. I glanced at the big table in the center of the room. My dad was there, laughing and chatting, with Logan, his wife, and their 2 kids right beside him, front and center. Logan looked up, caught my eye, and gave me a soft, casual smile that somehow felt smug and shameless all at once. In that exact moment, I knew he'd deliberately sent me the wrong time, so I'd show up late. Logan spoke first. "You're late. Traffic." His tone was light, but that smirk said it was no mistake. Before I could respond, my father's voice cut through the room. "The party started at 6 and you're just now showing up? Why didn't you stay home?" I stood frozen, trying to keep my voice steady. "I came at the time Logan texted. He said 7. Logan put on a look of fake surprise and said flatly, "Did I? My bad." I didn't argue. I pulled out my phone, opened the message, and handed it to a cousin standing nearby. She skimmed it, then said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "He's right. Logan texted 7. It's right here." The room went quiet for a moment, but Logan jumped in fast, trying to spin it. "Maybe I mixed it up, but come on, it's Dad's birthday. You should have known to come early. We're family, not just guests." Before I could say a word, my dad jumped in again, his voice sharper. "Logan's right. You don't respect me, Ethan. On my 60th birthday, of all days, a milestone. Logan's got way more on his plate than you, managing multiple shopping centers, and he still showed up at 4 to help out. Your job's unstable, your income's nothing to brag about. You, of all people, should have been here early to help set up, not strolling in like this." The whole room seemed to tense and shrink around us. Sarah gently placed her hand on my arm, stepping in before things could spiral further. "We're sorry, Dad. We'll make sure to come earlier next time," she said, her voice soft but just enough to ease the tension, if only a little. As her words faded, my dad's younger brother, Uncle Tom, stood up to break the heavy silence. "Come on, you're here now. Take a seat, son." I gave a slight nod, ready to step forward, but then I saw it. Not a single empty chair. They hadn't planned for us at all. My heart sank. I was never part of this. Noah and Emma looked up at me, their eyes a little unsure. Sarah turned to me, waiting for my signal. My cousin Jake stood up from the far end of the table, pulling extra chairs from the kitchen and scooting the kids' seats toward the wall to make space. "We'll squeeze in," Jake said with a friendly smile. "The kids can use the smaller chairs." I was about to help when my father tapped the table. Just a light tap, but it cut through the room like a slap. Everyone froze. "No need to rearrange anything," he said, his voice calm but razor sharp. "He showed up late. He can stand." I looked straight into his eyes. It wasn't just me standing. My wife and kids were too. His grandkids. Right there, in front of Sarah. Our children, and both sides of the family, he said something I'll never forget. Seats here are earned, not handed out to failures. The entire room went silent. No laughter, no comments, no one dared say a word. Noah tugged gently at my shirt. Emma stepped closer to Sarah. My throat burned, not from anger but from the raw humiliation of being stripped bare by the man who raised me. I glanced at Logan, who sat still, swirling the wine in his glass, saying nothing but watching me, his eyes quiet and sharp, like he was studying my next move. In that moment, for the first time in years, I realized I'd brought my wife and kids to the wrong place. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Stepping forward, I looked my father dead in the eye, my voice low but sharp. "What the hell did you just say? You called me a failure in front of your friends, your family, in front of your grandkids?" No one said a word. The only sound was the soft, awful background music, steady and emotionless, like it was trying to cover up the ugliness in the room. I pointed to Noah and Emma, standing by Sarah, frozen in confusion. Emma's face was red, her hands clenched. Noah held tight to Sarah's shirt, his eyes flicking between me and his grandfather, trying to make sense of it all. "You think they didn't hear you?" I said, my voice tighter but every word deliberate. "You think they didn't see how you looked at me? You really believe they won't remember the words you just said?" Logan let out a laugh, tilting his head like this was just a show for his amusement. "Ethan, come on, don't blow this out of proportion," he said, pretending to stay calm. I snapped toward him, my voice ice cold. "Shut up. I'm not talking to you." I turned back to my father, my eyes locked on his, my voice dropping low and steady, but razor sharp. "You said I don't deserve a seat? Fine, but let me ask you something. All those years I was struggling on my own. Did you ever call to check if I was okay? Was there a single dollar I borrowed from you and didn't pay back? Was there ever a moment you looked at me like I belonged in this family?" His face turned red, his hand trembling as he pointed at me. Then he exploded. "Shut your mouth. You don't get to speak to me like that. I'm your father. You're nothing compared to Logan, you hear me? Nothing. From the day you were born, all you've done is disappoint me." I was about to respond when my mother's voice cut through the tension. "That's enough, Ethan. If you came to celebrate, sit down. If not, leave. Don't cause a scene." She didn't stand, didn't even look at me, her eyes fixed on the glass of water in front of her, like it was the only thing holding her together. I turned to her, my voice steady, slow but sure, each word landing with weight. "You're my mother, but have you ever truly cared how I feel?" She flinched, her lips pressed tight, but I didn't stop. "When Dad told me I had to cover all my college expenses, where were you? When Sarah and I got married, did you help with anything, or were you off vacationing with Logan that weekend? When Noah and Emma were born, did you come to the hospital? Did you even hold them?" I paused, just long enough for the silence to settle, then said, clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear, "The answer is no." I looked around the room, then back at her, my voice shifting, not angry now but lower, heavier, like I was finally saying something that had weighed on my chest for years. Every bit of love, every ounce of effort, it all went to Logan. His wedding? You paid for everything. His kid in the hospital? You were there day and night. But me? When I needed you most, I was on my own. And now you tell me to be quiet? I shook my head and pointed to Noah and Emma behind me, silent and unsure. You can treat me however you want. I'm used to it. But them? They're your grandchildren. They've done nothing wrong. So tell me, why treat them like they don't exist? Why draw a line between your grandkids? The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. From across the room, a glass tapped the table softly, ringing out in the thick silence like a bell. My mother blinked rapidly, her shoulders trembling. She tried to speak, stammering, I do love them, Ethan. I do." I looked her straight in the eye, my voice firm and unwavering. "Then say it. Tell me, when are Noah and Emma's birthdays?" The room shrank to a single point. She froze, her lips drawn tight, like she'd swallowed a truth too bitter to admit. I knew she wouldn't answer. Every year I sent invites to their birthday parties, and every year they never showed, not once. As everyone stayed frozen, unsure what to say, Emma tugged at my sleeve, her voice barely a whisper, like she didn't want the grown-ups to hear. "Dad, I'm scared. Let's give Grandpa our gifts and go home, okay?" I stopped, looked at Sarah, who gave a slight nod. No words needed. I gently unhooked Emma's hand, reached into the bag, and pulled out 2 gifts. A handmade card Noah had spent days crafting, and a drawing Emma had carefully worked on all week. They'd poured their little hearts into them. I stepped forward, held up the gifts in the center of that quiet, breathless room, my voice not loud but clear. "Noah and Emma spent a whole week making these for you, Dad, but maybe you don't need them. Maybe Logan's gifts are enough." I paused, then pulled a small black velvet box from my coat pocket, opened it to reveal a $3,000 watch I'd bought the week before, carefully chosen, thoughtfully planned. This was from me, but after everything tonight, I don't think you deserve it. I looked at my parents, not with anger anymore, just exhaustion, and said, calmly, clearly, "Congratulations. Tonight you lost a son and 2 grandchildren." I reached for Noah's hand, squeezed Emma's tightly, and we turned to leave without looking back. We didn't head straight home. I pulled into a small restaurant about 5 minutes from the neighborhood, wanting to do something, anything, to make up for what the kids had been through. No one told them to smile, but when Emma started picking out dessert, her eyes lit up again, and Noah sat swinging his legs under the chair, excitedly telling Sarah about a classmate's wild science project. I knew their little hearts were slowly mending, and I felt a bit lighter. At least I'd done one thing right. I stood up for my children, even if it meant standing against the people who gave me life. That night, I couldn't sleep. The kids were sound asleep, but I lay there, wide-eyed, staring at the dark ceiling, like every memory of my life was projected onto it, one by one, in painful clarity. Since I was a kid, my parents always favored Logan, all because he was the one everyone praised, tall, good-looking, charming, and brilliant in school. Me? I came up short in every category, so in their eyes, I was always the one who didn't measure up, the one who was a little off. Whenever someone came over and mentioned my name, they didn't say Ethan Harper. They said Logan's little brother, and my parents never corrected them. I remember being 10 when Logan broke Mom's favorite vase and blamed me. I cried, Mom said nothing, and Dad looked at me and said, "You're a boy. Stop making a fuss over something so small." Logan stood there, silent, and I learned a lesson. Stay quiet, and you survive. I remember starting college, taking out my first student loan to cover tuition, while every cent of the family savings went to Logan for his startup. He had at least 3 failed ventures, and it wasn't until the past 4 years that he finally took a regular job like everyone else. But even now, I know deep down he's still chasing that startup dream. Despite all of it, I never hated my parents. Year after year, Sarah and I set aside a small amount, about $2,000, for Thanksgiving, birthdays, and Christmas, not because they needed it, but because I believed it was the right thing to do. But no matter how much I gave, only Logan was worth talking about. It got to the point where I honestly believed if Logan dragged a pile of garbage into the living room, they'd sit around the table debating which corner it'd look best in. Me. No matter what I brought home, no matter how bright it shined, they'd look at it like dust on a sleeve. I let out a quiet sigh, not loud, but enough to cut through the heavy silence of the dark room. Suddenly, I felt Sarah's arms slide around my waist, pulling me in gently. She was still awake. "You're still thinking about what happened, aren't you?" she said, her voice soft but piercing enough to know she'd been lying there, hearing everything I was trying to keep inside. I turned toward her, my forehead resting against hers, and whispered, "I'm done with them, Sarah. This time, for real. No more chances." She didn't argue. She just wrapped both arms around me, pulled me closer, and whispered back, "That's okay. I don't need you to be the good son in anyone's story. I need you to be a good husband and the father our kids will always be proud of." I closed my eyes, and it felt like I'd finally lifted a stone off my chest, one I didn't even realize I'd been carrying for years. I didn't need a seat at that old family table anymore. I had a home, a real one, where I didn't have to prove I was worthy to sit down. The next morning, around 9 o'clock, while Sarah and I were making breakfast for the kids, the doorbell rang, sharp, fast, and urgent. It was a Saturday, and Noah and Emma had the day off. We'd planned a family trip to the zoo that afternoon. I went to open the door and froze when I saw my parents standing there, Logan right behind them. My father spoke first, his tone as commanding and smug as ever. "Not going to invite us in?" Without a second thought, I answered firmly, "No. Strangers aren't allowed in my home." He snapped, his voice rising, "You disrespectful brat." My mother cut in quickly, her voice quiet but clear. "It's all right, we can talk out here. We just wanted to say something." I folded my arms, standing squarely in the doorway. "Then say it fast. I don't have much time for old wounds." My father glanced at Logan, let out a forced sigh, trying, it seemed, to appear humble. "We came to apologize. We might have said too much the other night." Logan said nothing, standing behind them with his hands in his pockets, eyes drifting off like he wasn't part of this. But I knew better. They weren't here out of guilt. They were here because after I walked out with my family, the crowd, their friends, their relatives, turned their backs on them. They no longer saw my father as the proud patriarch, but as a man who humiliated his son in front of his grandchildren. I knew this because Uncle Tom had called me earlier that morning. He told me everything, how people reacted, how several guests left early, and finally, he said, "If they show up at your door, be careful. The apology's just a cover. It's not regret. They're trying to save face." So, as I stood there, looking at the three people I used to call family, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt cold, the kind of cold that settles deep in your chest when something's long dead and finally acknowledged. I looked them in the eye and said, "Let's not pretend. You're not here because you're sorry. You're here because, for the first time, the family you care about turned their backs on you." My father clenched his jaw, his eyes dropping. My mother held her hands tightly against her chest, like she could squeeze the truth into silence. I continued, my voice even, almost calm. "But fine, if you really want to make things right, I'm not the one you need to convince. Let the kids decide. If they choose to let you in, I'll let it go. If not, this conversation's over." I turned back toward the house and called out, "Noah, Emma, come here for a second." A few seconds later, I heard small footsteps. Noah ran out first, still holding half a piece of toast. Emma followed, adjusting a crooked hair clip. I knelt and said, loud enough for my parents to hear, "Grandpa and Grandma want to come inside, but I think that decision should be yours." Noah looked at me, Emma glanced at Sarah, then turned back to me. Neither said a word, but after a few silent moments, they stepped forward, one on each side, and wrapped their arms around me. They didn't say Grandpa or Grandma, and they weren't the least bit happy to see them. At that moment, I stood back up, looked at my parents, and said, my voice calm, almost emotionless, "Looks like we have our answer." With that, the gate to my home closed, leaving the three of them standing there on the outside, watching us from where they now belonged. 2 years went by, and we lived our lives free from my parents, free from Logan. I no longer wondered whether I should call, whether I should drop by, whether I'd said or done something to offend someone. I stopped living like a child, standing outside the door of his own family, waiting for permission to be let in. Once I stopped chasing their approval, I saw how many years I'd wasted trying to earn something that was never mine to begin with. I thought things were finally calm, that we'd broken free from that cycle. But just when I began to let my guard down, they showed up again, back in our lives. I remember that day so clearly. It was a Monday afternoon, about 6 months ago. Sarah and I had just wrapped up work and picked the kids up from school. But as we pulled up to the house, I was surprised to see my parents standing at the front gate. Without a word, I drove straight into the garage. Sarah turned to me, her eyes quietly asking, "Did you know they were coming?" I shook my head. The moment I stepped out of the car, they started walking toward us, like there'd never been a gate between us, like none of it had happened. My mother spoke first, her voice trembling on the edge of tears. "Ethan, please help us. The bank's about to take the house." I didn't move, didn't say a word. My father, hands shaking, pulled a file from his bag and held it out toward me. Logan needed money to get his business going. He begged us, said he'd pay it back double in 6 months. We believed him, so I raised a hand, cutting him off. "What's that got to do with me?" My voice wasn't loud, but it stopped everything. I didn't hesitate. "Whoever made the mess, go to them. Go find Logan." My mother clutched the corner of her coat tightly, her voice choking. "He's gone, Ethan. Disappeared. We haven't heard from him in 2 months. We can't carry this alone anymore." I looked at them, at the faces I once called family, and for the first time in years, I saw something I hadn't seen before. They looked desperate. I let out a slow breath. "Let me see it." I reached out and took the file from my father, his hands shaking so badly the corner of the paper crumpled. I opened it, flipped through a few pages. A $200,000 loan, signed nearly 2 years ago, guaranteed by both of them. I let out a dry, bitter laugh and said, "How poetic. You left me behind, and now you come back to beg." I folded the file, looked straight at them, and spoke clearly, every word like a closing door. "You once said there was no seat for me at your table. Well, now I have no place for you in my life." My father stared at me, frozen for a few seconds, not even beginning to react. My mother stepped forward, tugging gently at the edge of my sleeve, like she was trying to hold on to the last thread of something long unraveled. Her voice cracked, faint and broken. "Ethan, please, I'm begging you. We're about to lose the house. If the bank takes it, we won't survive this." I stood there, staring down at my father's mud-caked shoes, then up into my mother's eyes. These were the people who chose another son over and over again, and only came back now, not out of love, but because they had no one else. Sarah stepped out and joined me, standing quietly beside me, gently placing her hand on mine, as if trying to keep something in me from slipping away entirely. Her voice was soft, honest, full of care. "Ethan, I know they've hurt you deeply, and I know it's not fair to ask, but they're getting old. If there's still anything you can do, maybe think about it. They're still your parents." I tightened my grip on her hand, but kept my eyes on the people in front of me. A small part of me, tiny, felt something soften, but the rest hadn't forgotten. I raised my head, looked straight at them, and said, my voice calm and even, carrying the weight of everything left unsaid, "All right, if you genuinely want my help, tell me the exact birth dates of my kids." They froze. Almost a full minute passed. My mother blurted out a random date. My father guessed another. Both wrong. I didn't correct them, didn't raise my voice. I said, gently, but with all the clarity in the world, almost 3 years ago, I asked you this same question right in front of everyone, and you didn't remember. And now, 3 years later, you still don't. With that, the gate to my home closed once more, shutting them out again. The following 2 days, Sarah and I sat down for a serious talk. It wasn't about pity, and it wasn't because I believed they deserved forgiveness. It was because I didn't want to live the rest of my life asking myself if I'd been too cruel. I didn't want to wake up one day after they were gone, wondering if I'd done the right thing. At precisely 10 o'clock in the morning, I showed up at my parents' house. They opened the door, relief and hope written all over their faces. My mother asked right away, "You've changed your mind, haven't you?" I didn't nod. I stepped inside, stood in the middle of the living room, and said plainly, "Don't get too happy. I'm not helping for free." I laid it all out. "I'm willing to help you keep this house, but under one condition. You sell it to me at full market value right now. That's around $400,000. They froze, but I kept going. "After that, if you want to continue living here, you'll pay rent, $1,000 a month. It's not cheap, but it's fair. It's the going rate. And one final condition. You both sign an agreement that Logan is never allowed to move back into this house under any circumstance." They pushed back. My father furrowed his brow and paced the room, like a man searching for a way out. My mother stared at me with eyes full of disbelief and quiet disappointment. But they had no options. No one else had stepped up. No relatives were willing to help, and Logan was gone. And me, the son they shut out from a birthday table 3 years ago, was now the only one still reaching out a hand. In the end, they agreed to my terms. All the paperwork was finalized the following week. The purchase contract, title transfer, rental lease, and a legally binding agreement banning Logan from the property, all signed in front of a lawyer. I didn't say much, and they didn't ask. It was handled cleanly, clearly, like a business transaction between 3 strangers who happened to share a last name. They've now been renting the house from me for 6 months, and I know some of you listening might be ready to throw stones, saying things like, "You call yourself a son and take money from your parents," or even cold-blooded. But before you rush to judge, let me tell you this. Not a single dollar of that $1,000 monthly rent has gone into my pocket. Sarah and I have used every cent to purchase 2 comprehensive health insurance plans for them because at their age, that's what they need most. I didn't do it for praise, not to prove I'm a good person. I did it because one day, when they're gone, I don't want to live with the question, could I have done something more? Now, I know some of you are listening who say they don't deserve it, that I should have walked away, let them face the consequences of their choices. And honestly, I thought that too. But in the end, I chose to help, not because they earned it, but because I didn't want to become like them. And before I close this story, I want to ask you, those of you still here, still listening, was I wrong? Was I wrong to reach out one more time? Was I wrong to buy back the house and then charge my parents' rent? Please share your thoughts below. I genuinely want to know. And if this story meant something to you, consider subscribing, giving it a like, and sharing it. So maybe someone else out there feels a little less alone. Thank you so much for listening.
Dear friends, we're thrilled to have you with us. Get ready for a whirlwind of emotions, unexpected twists, and gripping stories. New adventures drop every single day, packed with tension, mystery, and excitement. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This channel is made for you, and the most thrilling moments are still to come.